Hello, ELA1 students. This is Mr. Battaglia. We're talking today about the Trojan War. Some of you, this has been crazy for all of us. Some of you had me before. We had talked about the Trojan War. We were supposed to finish this the last 9 weeks. I've got a handful of new students. And as teachers, we have decided to kind of cut a lot of the stuff. We are going with kind of what we think is the most important. So I'm focusing on the Trojan War and the hero cycle. That's what I'm going to be sharing on most of my lessons. And then you guys are also working on your book talks. That's what we're doing. So today's video is about the Trojan War. I want you to keep in mind a few things. Homer, who lived about 800 BCE, before the Common Era, he was a blind poet. He was a storyteller, would go around to various Greek city-states, and on a Friday night, all the Greek boys and girls and all the families would gather around the forum or the square and listen to the various bards and poets that traveled through. Homer just happens to be the most famous one. Now, he was living about 800 BCE. He was telling the golden age of heroes stories. He was talking about people that lived, the heroes that lived about 1200 BCE. Of course, they fully believed that the gods who lived atop Mount Olympus, we talked about the pantheon of gods, the major ones, but they had a god for everything. They fully believed that the gods would intervene in life. And that's why even today, if you go to Greece, they are a wonderful country to trek through. They're very open and welcoming to strangers, and it happened because you never knew if a stranger was a traveler or a god in disguise, which happens in the Odyssey. So even today, that tradition is still there. So Homer would tell these two stories, these huge stories. Actually, it would be kind of one story. One pertains to the Trojan War, and that's the Iliad. We're talking about the Odyssey, but the Odyssey starts with halfway through this journey. So you need to know, we're talking about Odysseus. Now, you do have a character chart. If you want to pause this video as you go to fill out the character chart, I'll stress the names that are on the chart. Odysseus, he is the king of Ithaca, 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 I believe. There are multiple interpretations. There are multiple spellings and ways to say things. Telemachus, Telemachus, Hercules, Heracles. Anyway, he is king of Ithaca. He goes to the Trojan War. Now let's talk about that, because our book, the Odyssey, starts when the Trojan War is over. Okay, so how did he even get there, right? He is famous, of course, for the Trojan horse, which we will talk about. I'm sure you guys have heard the term, and today it's almost a military tactic that survived that says, let's sneak something in with one of our guys and it'll get him from the inside. That's basically what it means today. So how does he get to Troy? How does Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, travel all the way to Troy? Well, here is modern day Ithaca, and here is modern day Troy, which is in Hisarlik, Turkey. Now, how does he get there? Why does he go there? Well, it all starts because of a woman. So Odysseus, he's the king of Ithaca. He hears about Helen, who is the queen of Sparta. Now, Greek is not a country at this time. It's a collection of city-states. Ithaca, Thebes, Athens, Sparta. Sometimes they would fight against each other, like in the Peloponnesian War. Sometimes they would join together. So he's king of Ithaca. He hears about neighboring Sparta. Their queen gets stolen. Helen was supposed to be the most beautiful woman in all the world, and she is known today as the face that launched 1,000 ships. So Helen is captured and taken to Troy by Paris. He is the prince of Troy. Now, Paris isn't really relevant in the Odyssey, but just so you know, that's who he is. So he steals Helen, brings her to Troy. Now, all the other Greek city-states want to use this as an excuse. It's wonderful to say Helen was taken and they're going to fight for her honor, but Troy was a very rich city, and they wanted to sack it. Now, Odysseus, he was very reluctant. He didn't want to leave his home islands of Ithaca. He loved his land. He has a newborn son, Telemachus, or Telemachus, depending on where you put the syllable or syllable. And he didn't want to leave his wife, Penelope. He loved them both. Also, when he was younger, he did have a prophecy received from an oracle, which is like a modern-day fortune teller. He had a prophecy received from an oracle that said he would have a perilous journey that would take him away from home for 20 years. So he didn't know if this was the journey. He didn't want to go. However, there is a council of kings that gets together all the other Greek city-states and say, hey, this is going to be good for us. Plus, we got to back up our boy, Menelaus, and go get his wife back. But basically, we're going to get rich. So the Greek city-states kind of convince him, plus he had that prophecy when he was younger, to leave his home. Thus, he leaves the normal world of Ithaca and is off around the bend there to go to Troy. He has no idea of what's to come because it's going to take him 20 years before he gets home. Telemachus, his newborn son, is not going to be 20 until he sees his dad again. Now, they go to Troy, and they're fighting for 10 years. 10 years. Imagine, this is a siege warfare. Imagine you're a Trojan boy or girl, and you wake up every day, and you peer outside your huge city walls. You can't leave for 10 years. Almost, it's kind of like we are now, right? We are all in our homes here for various reasons, and we can't leave our homes. And here we've got the Trojans in a similar condition. They can't leave Troy. So imagine for 10 years, you peek out and there are ships there. You can't leave. 10 years. They're just relying on their stores of food. Well, finally finally the Greeks say, we don't know what to do. How are we going to win this war? What the heck? So Odysseus has the idea. He's the hero. He says, you know what? Let's pretend we leave. Let's build this great horse because Troy was a horse city. They revered horses. Let's build this homage. Let's build this sacrifice. Let's build this offering to let them think we've lost, to let them think we've left, and we've given them a parting gift. So imagine in the 10th year, you're a little Trojan boy or girl, and you wake up, all of a sudden, those 1,000 ships that were anchored for 10 years outside your city walls, suddenly it's gone. A sight many of the children had never even seen before, an open sea. So, they see this big horse, they wheel it on in the city gates, they open up the city gates that the Trojans, or that the Greeks could never get over, and they party like there's no tomorrow. Well, little did they know, Odysseus snuck inside the Trojan horse with basically an elite assassin squad that was hiding inside. So, the Trojans unknowingly bring in the Trojan horse. They party, because why wouldn't you? Once you win the war, your men have come home. They are no longer out there fighting every day, and it's going to be wonderful. Well, about 3 a.m. in the morning, when everybody is asleep or passed out, Odysseus and this little hit squad sneak out of the Trojan horse. They creep around to the back door where all the Greeks are waiting. They throw open the doors and they sack the city. Now, here we see the main purpose of myth. We see the main purpose of myth, and that is to reinforce cultural values. A myth shows us heroes, and they're used as a model or a warning. They are used to model behavior as if to say, remember what Odysseus did. He used his intelligence to win the Trojan War. You too should use your intelligence. But then there are also times where Odysseus does something wrong, and they will say, oh, remember Odysseus, there's an instance where he's too curious for his own good and some of his men die. So the warning there, the cultural value reinforced is don't be too curious, right? Lead a balanced life. Well, in this case, this is the epitome, the example of what is known as metis. That is the Greek word metis. It means cunning or intelligence. This is also why Odysseus was a great hero. He wasn't a demigod. He didn't have an immortal parent. He had two regular old parents. And so, all Greek little boys and girls, they've got regular parents just like Odysseus, so they could easily identify with this hero. Not only that, Odysseus wasn't Hercules. He wasn't Achilles. He wasn't a man of great strength. He didn't win the war on strength. He won the war with intelligence, and many little Greek boys and girls aren't incredibly strong, but they too can use their intelligence, or what they referred to as cunning, to win the war. It was his cunning, it was his idea to sneak inside the belly of the horse, to pretend that all the ships went away, knowing they would bring in the horse, knowing they would party, knowing at early in the morning they could sneak out, and all those Greek warriors had snuck around to the back gate, they threw open the doors, and woo, they win. That is the Iliad in the briefest of nutshells. The Iliad is the first 10 years of Odysseus's journey. Now, you guys have been talking or hopefully starting to learn about the hero cycle. Eventually, we're going to start plugging in Odysseus into the hero cycle. But it's, kind of obvious, right? The first part of the hero cycle is called the ordinary world. And for Odysseus, his ordinary world was King of Ithaca. Oh, tried to highlight it there. King of Ithaca. He was married to Penelope, and his son was Telemachus. That is his ordinary world. The call to adventure is Helen is taken, right? She is stolen. The hero feels fear and wants to turn back. That is called the refusal of the call. He says, no, I've had a bad prophecy. Also, I've got this beautiful wife and a newborn son. I don't want to go. There's the meeting of the mentors. In this case, well, the definition, the hero comes across a seasoned traveler to offer advice. And in this case, it's the Council of the Kings. They all get together and say, yeah, we should do this. So we already have the first couple parts of the hero cycle, boom, right here. Now I'm going to continue going over how Odysseus plugs into the hero cycle. I basically wanted you to get an idea of how this all begins. So points to take away. We've got Odysseus, king of Ithaca. We've got Helen, queen of Sparta. She was captured and taken to Troy. She's known as the face that launched 1,000 ships. We know of Penelope, the queen of Ithaca. We know of Telemachus, who was the baby prince of Ithaca, but he's going to grow up over the next 20 years. And, of course, Odysseus himself. This is how he becomes famous all the world over. So from this starting point, they've just won the war. He is the king of Ithaca and the guy that won it. He's going to be famous. However, we're going to slowly start to see all the rest of the Greek city-state kings head home. And they get home about year 11. Year 12 goes by. Year 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years. And still, Penelope is looking out her window and not seeing Odysseus. So what has happened to him? The story of what happens when he leaves Troy to go back home to Ithaca, that is the Odyssey. And that's where we're going to be talking about. Now again, this is a very brief version of everything. I'm going to give you the highlights, even our book itself. The Odyssey is multiple books. Our book itself only does a couple. It does, book 1, then it jumps to book 5. I'm going to give you the overview. I will certainly read parts of the Odyssey from our book, but I want you to understand what's going on, and that's where it starts. So when we start the Odyssey, it is 20 years after the war began, and we're left scratching our heads, where in the heck is Odysseus? So then you kind of go through these flashbacks to see, all right, the Trojan War ends, and here's what happened to him. So that's the setup. That's where we are. The Trojan War has ended. Odysseus is the hero. Everybody is going to start to go back home, which is all right near Ithaca, Thebes, Sparta, Athens. These are all other city-states right around Ithaca. So everybody's going to go back home, but Odysseus's journey, it is a long journey. It's going to take him 10 years. It is perilous. He's going to have trials and tribulations. It's a long journey over great time and space where you have to conquer many adversaries, and there are ups and downs. There are trials and tribulations. I mean, that's what an Odyssey is today. When you think of an Odyssey, it's a long journey. It's a long story where lots of things happen, and the hero has ups and downs. That comes from this story, okay? All right, that is today's video. You can watch it again if you need. Fill out the character chart from the characters we've mentioned. And again, that's how the Odyssey begins. All right, catch you later.